I remember those early days with Iris as if they were yesterday. We were just your typical couple trying to build a life together. 10 years, that's how long we've been married. 10 years that I thought were happy. 10 years that I genuinely believed were filled with love, trust, and partnership. I guess it's true what they say. Life has a funny way of kicking you in the teeth when you least expect it. I always thought we were solid, Iris and I. We had our routines, sure, but it was comforting. I'd get up early, head to work at the firm, and she'd handle her interior design gigs. She was always so passionate about it, finding joy in the smallest details, picking the right shade of paint, arranging furniture just so. I used to admire that about her. At least I did until everything came crashing down. Looking back, I should have noticed the cracks sooner. But when you're knee-deep in the daily grind, it's easy to overlook the signs. We lived in a cozy little house in the suburbs, with a yard where I'd spend my weekends tending to my roses. Those dominoes, I thought they symbolized something, growth, nurturing a life we were building together. Turns out, they were just another thing I used to distract myself from the reality I didn't want to face. Sloan had been a part of our lives for as long as I can remember. He was like family, always around to help with whatever we needed, fixing a leaky faucet, lifting heavy furniture, and even installing our new dishwasher when it crapped out on us. There was always a casualness to his presence, a familiarity that made it easy to trust him. I never questioned it. Why would I? The guy was practically a brother to me. And Iris? She was always so warm and welcoming toward him. At the time, I figured that was just her nature. But then things started to shift. I didn't realize it at first. It was all these tiny things, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. I'd come home from work, and there would be this atmosphere in the house. The air felt thick, almost like I was intruding on something. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I brushed it off. You get paranoid, you drive yourself crazy, right? That's what I told myself, at least. Then, one afternoon I got off work early. The firm had some server issues, and they sent everyone home. I didn't bother calling Iris. I figured it'd be a nice surprise. When I walked through the door, I found Sloan in the kitchen with her. It wasn't the fact that he was there that caught me off guard. It was the way Iris jumped when she saw me. She dropped the glass she was holding, shattering it on the tile floor. "Oh, Lyndon, I didn't expect you home so soon," she stammered, her face flushed. Sloan was too quick with his explanation. Something about helping her set up the new washing machine in the basement. His tone was too smooth, too rehearsed. I didn't press it. I tried to ignore the knot forming in my gut. But that image of her nervous face stuck with me. It kept replaying in my mind like a bad movie. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I was too much of a coward to face it head on. So I buried it. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was just stressed from work. But then more things started happening. Iris, who had always been perfectly content with our quiet life, suddenly got a gym membership. Out of the blue, she was working out almost every day. She'd come back home flushed and sweaty, practically glowing. She claimed it was for her health, that she just wanted to feel good about herself again. And like an idiot, I bought it. Sloan, meanwhile, seemed to be everywhere, dropping by with little gifts for Iris, a bottle of wine here, a fancy vase there. He'd always laugh it off, saying it was just a thank you for her helping him pick out colors for his house renovation or some other bullshit excuse. I didn't think much of it at first. Iris was always doing favors for our friends, but the gifts kept getting more extravagant, and I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. The turning point came at one of the Maxwell's barbecues. The Maxwells were our neighbors, Clara and Nathan, lovely couple, always inviting us over for these laid-back get-togethers. I was chatting with Nathan about work stuff when I glanced across the yard. There was Iris, laughing at something Sloan was whispering into her ear. And then I saw it, his hand lightly resting on hers. It wasn't the kind of touch you'd expect from a family friend. No, it was like they had a secret. And just like that, it hit me. It was a dumbo. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. My heart was racing, but I tried to play it cool. I didn't want to make a scene, not there, in front of the Maxwells and all our neighbors. But I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. That night, lying next to Iris in bed, I couldn't sleep. Every time she shifted beside me, I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, drowning in my own thoughts. The next morning, I made up my mind. I needed proof. After that night at the Maxwell's barbecue, I couldn't get the image of Sloane's hand resting on Iris's out of my mind. I'd been on edge ever since, my instincts screaming at me that something was going on between them. But I needed more than just a gut feeling. I needed proof. One evening, when Iris was in the shower, I noticed her phone lying unattended on the kitchen counter. I hesitated at first. I mean, who wants to be that guy, snooping through his wife's phone like some paranoid creep? But something inside me urged me on. I told myself I just needed to confirm I was wrong, that this was all just a figment of my imagination. But when I unlocked her phone and opened her messages, I was met with a flurry of heart emojis and lines like, "I miss you and can't wait to see you again." The sender? Sloan, of course. I felt my blood run cold, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure she could hear it from upstairs. I should have confronted her right then and there, should have marched upstairs and demanded to know what the hell was going on. But no, something stopped me. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the realization that if I played this right, I could take them both down in a way that would hurt a hell of a lot more than just a screaming match in our living room. So I put her phone back exactly where I found it, and I started planning. First thing I did was install a couple of hidden cameras. I got them online, tiny little things barely bigger than a button with motion detection and audio recording. I planted one in the living room and another in the kitchen, the two places Sloan and Iris seemed to gravitate toward whenever he was around. It was like laying a trap and just waiting for them to fall into it. For the next few days, I acted like nothing was wrong. I went to work, came home, made small talk over dinner with Iris, all while feeling like I was walking on broken glass. Meanwhile, I'd sneak off late at night, reviewing the footage from the cameras on my laptop in my study. At first, there was nothing but mundane conversations and laughter that grated on my nerves. But then one evening, I finally hit the jackpot. Then, one evening, I finally came across what I had been looking for. There they were, sitting together on our couch, the same one I had bought with my hard-earned money. I watched as Sloan leaned in closer to her, speaking softly. The way they were interacting felt too personal, too familiar. That was all the confirmation I needed, and it made my stomach drop. From that moment on, I played the game. I'd invite Sloan over for dinners like nothing was wrong, pouring him a drink and watching as he laughed with Iris right in front of me. I could tell they thought they were so clever, so sneaky, but it was all an act on my part, like setting the stage for their downfall. That's when I brought Arlo into the picture. Arlo's been my buddy for years. We go way back. And lucky for me, he works in IT and knows his way around a phone better than anyone I've ever met. When I told him about my suspicions, he didn't even bat an eye. No judgment, no hesitation. "Say no more, man," he said. "Let's get this bastard." With Arlo's help, we hacked into Iris's phone and pulled up everything. Texts, call logs, even a few of those cringy voice messages she'd been sending to Sloan. Every new message I uncovered was like a dagger to the heart. But I kept reminding myself that I was doing this for a reason. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I spent the next few weeks digging into Sloan's life. See, I knew Sloan wasn't exactly a saint, but I had no idea just how dirty his hands were. Turns out his business wasn't as squeaky clean as he liked to portray. I uncovered contracts that were borderline fraudulent, deals that would get him into serious trouble if they ever saw the light of day. I knew I could use this to my advantage. Once I had enough dirt, I put the next phase of my plan into action. With Arlo's help, we started leaking the information anonymously to some of Sloan's biggest clients. It didn't take long for the rumors to spread. Clients started pulling out of deals, backing away from contracts they'd already signed. Sloan's business began to bleed money. Every day, I'd watch him scramble, trying to figure out who was behind it. But of course, I kept playing the part of the clueless friend, even inviting him over for beers to talk things through. But I wasn't done. I still had one more card to play. See, Sloan wasn't just a sleaze in business. He was a sleaze in his personal life, too. The guy had been living with his partner for years, a sweet woman who had no idea what kind of dirtbag she was with. So, I took all those screenshots of his texts and photos with Iris and sent them to her, anonymously of course. I can only imagine the look on Sloan's face when he came home to find her packing her bags, ready to walk out of his life for good. I heard she took half of everything they owned, leaving him high and dry. Iris, on the other hand, was completely oblivious to what was happening. She had no idea that the man she was cheating on me with was having his entire life blown up piece by piece. And I wasn't done with her yet. I still had to figure out how to make her pay for what she did to me, but I was biding my time. I wanted to make sure every piece was in place before I struck. I kept up the charade with Iris, playing the role of the doting husband. I'd smile at her, kiss her on the cheek, all while knowing full well that I was slowly dismantling everything she thought she had. And the best part? She had no clue. Every time she'd smile at me or thank me for being so understanding, I had to fight back the urge to laugh in her face. She thought she was winning, but she had no idea that her entire world was about to come crashing down. And that's where I am now. I've got the evidence, I've got the plan, and all that's left is to pull the trigger. Part of me wants to blow it all up now, to confront her, to see the look on her face when she realizes she's been caught. But I've waited this long. What's a little more time? The day finally came when I couldn't keep up the charade any longer. I had all the evidence I needed, videos, texts, everything. I was done playing the doting, clueless husband. So, I filed for divorce. Iris never saw it coming. One morning, I handed her the papers over breakfast. The color drained from her face, her fork clattering against her plate. "Lyndon, what is this?" she stammered, eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't say a word. I just let her read through the documents. It wasn't until she reached the section detailing my evidence, the photos, the texts, the recordings, that she started to panic. Her hands were shaking as she flipped through the pages. This isn't what it looks like," she started, tears welling up in her eyes. Oh, how the tables had turned. For once, I was the one with control. "Save it, Iris," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "I know everything. I've seen everything." She tried to launch into this half-assed explanation, tears streaming down her face. "It didn't mean anything, Lyndon. It was just, I was confused, okay? It was a mistake. I swear I still love you." Her words were like nails on a chalkboard. I couldn't believe that after everything, she thought a few crocodile tears and empty apologies would fix this. I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch, letting her squirm. Finally, I leaned in close and said, "You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." She broke down then, sobbing, begging me for another chance. But there was no more sympathy left in me. That part of me had died the moment I saw her with Sloan on those hidden cameras. I felt numb, almost like I was watching it all unfold from a distance, detached from the chaos that was unraveling in front of me. When we finally went to court, I laid out all my evidence for the judge to see. There was no denying it. The videos, the texts, the financial documents showing how she'd funnel money to help Sloan when his business started to collapse. It was all there. Iris sat in the courtroom, her eyes downcast, shoulders slumped, as her lawyer tried to salvage whatever they could. But it was too late. I had them cornered, and the judge ruled in my favor. By the time the dust settled, Iris was left with nothing but the clothes on her back. The house? Mine. The savings account? Drained. I made sure she walked away with as little as possible. She ended up moving into a cramped, run-down apartment on the outskirts of town. The woman who once hosted lavish dinner parties and redecorated our home with every changing season was now struggling to make ends meet. I'd like to say it felt good to watch her fall, but the truth is, it was hollow. Revenge might be sweet, but it leaves a bitter aftertaste. Still, I walked away, refusing to let her drag me back down into her mess. With Iris out of my life, I decided it was time for a change of scenery. I took a few weeks off work, packed a bag, and just drove. No destination in mind, just a need to get away from everything that reminded me of her. I ended up in a small town far from the city, a place where nobody knew me, where I could finally breathe. That's where I met Dahlia. She ran this little antique shop on the corner of the main street. I'd stopped in out of curiosity, just looking for something to kill time. Dahlia was there behind the counter, surrounded by old records, dusty books, and a collection of trinkets that looked like they'd seen better days. We struck up a conversation about some jazz records she had for sale, and before I knew it, I was coming back every day just to talk to her. There was something about her that felt easy. No pretense. no hiding agendas. She didn't pry into my past, and I was grateful for that. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could relax. We started spending our evenings together, listening to jazz in this tiny bar down the street. We talk about art, literature, and all the things I'd forgotten I cared about. But just when I thought I'd left all my baggage behind, life had one more surprise in store for me. One night, after a few too many glasses of wine, I opened up to Dahlia about everything. About Iris, Sloan, the revenge I'd taken. I expected her to be shocked, maybe even a little disgusted. But she just listened, nodding thoughtfully. When I finally finished my rant, she looked at me with this odd expression. "I know Sloan," she said quietly. My stomach dropped. We used to date years ago, before he turned into the asshole you're describing. For a moment, I thought she was joking. But no, she was dead serious. My past had followed me, even here, to this tiny town in the middle of nowhere. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but Dahlia just laughed it off. "Don't worry, I've got no love left for that guy," she assured me. Still, it was hard to shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as free from my past as I thought. A few months later, just when I thought things were finally settling down, I got a call from Arlo. "Lyndon, we've got a problem," he said. Turns out, Sloan had figured out I was the one behind the leaks that destroyed his business. The bastard was trying to strike back, looking for ways to screw up my life the way I'd done his. But this time I was ready. With Dahlia by my side, I was done playing defense. We dug into Sloan's new schemes, using everything I'd learned during my little vendetta to turn the tables. It was almost laughable how predictable he was. Sloan tried to mess with my new life, but every move he made just exposed him further. We gathered all the evidence and hit him where it hurt the most, ending his last desperate attempts to get back at me. In the end, I realized something. I'd spent so much time trying to tear Iris and Sloan down that I'd almost lost sight of who I was. But with Dahlia, I finally felt like I could start over. There was no grand declaration, no fairy tale ending. Just two people who'd been through their share of hell, trying to find some peace in each other's company. Sloan? He's a ghost now. Iris? She's just a bad memory. As for me, I'm done looking back. I've made my choices, and I'm ready to live with the consequences. This time, though, it's on my own terms.